Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here on African Confessions. The following story that you're going to be listening to, it comes from a narration of a message that I received, and it reads like this. Hello, brother, how are you? Can you please post my story as hidden identity? I want you to ask your listeners, how can I approach some of my relatives that are stuck in South Africa because they are suffering them? I have many of my relatives that have been stuck in South Africa for a very long time, and everything that they are going through, it is not because they are poor, but they are being chased by the spirit of poverty because they are unable to be with us at the time when we are supposed to perform our rituals, the rituals that we have been performing in our family since around 1971-72. How can I tell some of my Christian relatives that religion is what has made them to be poor? Because now that they have given their lives to Christ, they think that they don't need to perform the rituals that our grandfather and his brothers used to perform. As long as they do not perform those rituals, it means that they are always going to suffer for the rest of their lives. And what really hurts me is that in South Africa, I do have my cousin brother's daughter who is staying there, and she has a spiritual husband. And this spiritual husband, it is not just a random spirit, but it is the spirit of a man that was from Mozambique who was murdered by my father. He started working for my father around 1991. So this man, he had came to Zim to look for a job in our country, and he was from Mozambique. So then my father took him to one of his farm, and then he started working there. Since he was young and he was from Mozambique, and he was not that much educated, this is what my father ended up doing to him. My father said that if you work for me for such a number of years, I am going to give you my daughter. And he then agreed, and he started working for my father without getting any single cent. They would only buy food for him for many years. But when it came time for this man, whose real name was called Manuel, he was from Mozambique, when he approached my father and he told my father that he wanted my father to honor his promise as they had agreed upon when he started working for my father. And now a number of years had passed, and he would see that my father kept on accepting men that would come and they would say that they wanted to marry his daughters. So when he told my father, when he reminded him about the covenant that they had between them, my father then organized with other traditional healers. Since he had a lot of money, they came and then they murdered this man. After they had murdered him, he then started to come back as a vengeful spirit fighting against my father. My father was a man who knew a lot of stuff that has to do with African tradition and African magic. They then created another covenant. This covenant that they created, what happened was that my father then wrote our names and placed them in a clay pot. These clay pots were taken into this other holy mountain, and in that mountain it is said that there are marine spirits that reside there, and he also wrote the new rules of the covenant. So this spirit of Manuel, the man from Mozambique that he had recently killed, he could not get any of his daughters to become his wife. So my father then said to that spirit, if you want a wife, what you have to do is that go to my brother's daughters, seek a wife amongst them. Anyone that you choose will become your wife. My father did this because he knew very well that his brothers, all of them, they had left the village because they did not want to participate in the family rituals and all the sacrifices that we do twice each and every year. So they moved to the city, and then they started to go to Pentecostal churches. But what they do not know is that as long as you have the blood of a man that used to perform rituals flowing in your veins, you can never run away from the rituals that your ancestor used to perform. So my father then sent those negative spirits to go and to do whatever that they wanted with his brothers, his sisters, as well as their children. So since they go to church, they do not believe in the rituals that we perform. So these are the rituals that our grandfather and his brothers sat down as a family, and then they decided that these were the rituals that were supposed to be performed in our family, like forever. This is our covenant that they made with the people that they killed. My grandfather, he was loved by a lot of white people. He ended up becoming a lawyer, and he was one amongst the first few black people to ever buy a house in a whites-only suburb because of the work that he was doing. The reason as to why the white people, they loved him during that time when colonialism was still happening, it was because my grandfather, he used to be a sellout, and he would go around our province and he would go into farms where he knew that those that were fighting for the country to have independence and black majority rule, they used to be dependent on the people that stayed in the rural areas as well as working on the farm so that they can have some food to eat whilst they were fighting in the bush war. So my grandfather, he would be given money by the Rhodesian government, and this money that would be given to him, he had to give this money to the people that were staying deep in the rural areas as well as in the farms, so that if you would see a comrade and you report the base where those soldiers would be staying, then you will be given some money. He was well known, and he got a lot of black people killed because he would sell out those black people that used to provide food to the comrades that were hiding in the mountains, in the bushes. So since he got a lot of people killed, that was when he made a deal with the spirits of those people that he got killed. And he said to them, from now on, you are going to be like a god of our family. Each and every year, we are going to hold a ceremony and we are going to brew traditional beer and pour it to the ground. And each and every year, we will slaughter bulls that we will slaughter for you to eat. So these were the rituals that our grandfathers taught our father and his brothers. But after our grandfather had passed away, that was when my father's brothers and sisters, they then decided that they did not want to stay in the rural areas anymore. And then they came to the city and they started worshipping Christianity, and they forgot about the ways that their father had taught to them, and they started to struggle in life. All of my relatives, those that have since refused to perform these rituals, they struggle. Even if they work, they can never be able to achieve anything. And it pains me a lot because I am a woman that has her own businesses and I can take care of my relatives. And it really gives me so much pain to watch my relatives claiming that their God, their Christian God, will do miracle and wonders for them, yet they are struggling like this. What has brought me here is I need advice, especially for my cousin brother's daughter who is stuck in South Africa. She is stuck. She does not have a husband, and whenever she stays with a man, that man will end up complaining and say that this woman, she is very rude. She becomes rude because she is already married to the spirit of that man that is called Manuel. Even if she is taken to a prophet or a sangoma this very day, that spirit of that man that was killed by our father will speak through her and tell everyone that this body is mine and I have possessed it, and this person is my wife. How can I approach my relatives since they are Christians and they believe that by the blood of Jesus Christ, they share no DNA with our grandfather? who was known to perform all of these rituals. But our grandfather, what he said before he passed away, he said that any of my children that will not perform these rituals, they will be hunted down by the spirits of all the people that I got killed, and the spirits of those people I have given the spirits the go ahead to do whatever that you want with any of my offspring that will refuse to honor you as the God, the ancestors of the family. Because when we talk about ancestors, we do not talk about the ancestors like those that were related to us by blood, but we talk about the people that made a new covenant with our grandfathers. My grandfather had his own brothers that were assisted by the Rhodesians to go and study in America. So they started their own clan there in America. But to show support and to show that they also understand that this has to be done like forever, they do send us money, not because we want their money. I am able to do it on my own, because when it is in January, we are supposed to sacrifice some bulls, as well as at the end of the year, we are supposed to cleanse ourselves. And then in the beginning of the year, when we make more sacrifices, then it means that we will be asking for our gods to provide for us throughout the year. So some of our relatives that are in America, they have to participate. They will buy whatever that is needed for that traditional ceremony. The only problem that we have in the family is that some of our relatives, those that claim to be Christians, but yet they are suffering. And whenever I think about the way that they are suffering, my heart bleeds. But my other relatives, those that I perform the rituals with, they always say, why do you worry about these people? They have not yet suffered. If they suffer, they will come to us and they will ask for us to allow them to be there when we perform the rituals, worshiping the gods of our family. My brother once said that if a man has diarrhea, he will sleep close to the door with the door wide open, so that when he wants to go and relieve himself, he will just run out of the room where he will be sleeping. He said, you cannot force a man that has diarrhea to sleep next to the door. So if they have suffered, they are going to come back home and they will ask us to help them so that they can be cleansed. But my heart bleeds for my relatives. How can I approach a person that is a Christian that believes that since they are now born again Christians, they do not have to perform the rituals that their ancestors used to perform, even though their ancestors had a covenant with the spirits of the people that they wronged? Dear listeners, right, there was a message that was sent to me by one of our dear sister. Let us try to speak with our dear sister in the comment section. That was the narration of the message that she sent to me. Then there is another message that I want to share with you. And the message, it reads like this. Hello, Brother Nashey, how are you? Can you please post my story as hidden identity? I need advice either from a Sangoma that is South African who might understand what I am going through, or someone that can pray for me. I used to be a thief and we robbed this other house. It is there in Midrand. It is a double-storied house that we broke into and we stole some stuff. This happened, it was in the year 2012. What led me into this kind of a lifestyle? It was because of poverty. When I was back in Zim, I was not involved in all of these criminal activities. I used to go and dig up for gold illegally, and then what started to happen is that those that have political power, they would come to the place where we would be mining, and then they will force us to work for them. They would send soldiers and policemen with those police dogs threatening to kill us. So that is how we used to survive. hand to mouth, but we were the ones that were taking all of the risk to go underground to dig up for the gold. Then at the end of the day, you will be given just a little bit of money. Then you would have to share amongst yourselves, and you will see that you have worked for nothing. So I then spoke with one of my friends who had came to Zim. He had a lot of laptops, mobile phones, and he bought a car. I asked him how he was managing in South Africa. He told me that he was working really hard in South Africa, but what I did not know was that this friend of mine, he was now an armed robber. He was working with this other South African gang, and they were targeting mainly your university students as well as college students. They would follow them from campus, and then they would just rob them and take their cell phones and laptops, tablets. So later on, I discovered that my friend, what he used to do is that when he would be moving with his South African friends, after they would have robbed these students off from their phone, since they wanted money to go and drink beer, and you would just give them a little bit and you will keep those cell phones. You will come and you would sell them in Zim. He ended up opening an electronics shops in Zim. But when he told me that he was working really hard in South Africa when we were still in Zim, I believed him. I then begged him to take me with him back to South Africa, and he did so. We then came and we started staying in Soweto. But from the moment that we arrived at the place where he was staying, I told myself that this one, he was a murderer, an armed robber, because I saw all the tools, your OKPs, anything that a thief can use, those that do armed robberies. And he then sat down and he said, my friend, this is South Africa. This is how I have been surviving, but you do not need to tell anyone. He then introduced me to that South African gang. Later on, we then discovered that the gang that he had been working for, they were really robbing us. That is why we ended up working with Tsepo and his gang. He was later arrested. So the previous gang, what they used to do is that if they wanted to rob a person, they would put us in front. But if you would get caught, that person will just say that I was robbed by two Zimbabwean guys, but the mastermind would be the gang members, most of them that were South African. If they wanted us to go and kidnap someone, they would put us in front. So later on, we started to do our own stuff with the new gang. So in that gang, what they used to do is that if they wanted to go and rob a house, they would make sure that they gather as much information as they can. And usually the information, it is given to the gang members through a maid. Your maid is the one that knows everything that you do, maybe how much money that you make, where you keep your valuable possessions, or your gardener. So they had this other guy who was working in garden services. He had been working in the industry for a long time. What he used to do is that if his boss will go and drop him at a particular house, he would look at where the cameras were, if there was a blind spot, and he would mark everything and give the information to those gangsters. So then after they had been given information about this other house that was in Midrand, we were told that the owners of that house, they were on a vacation, and he knew their entire routine. He knew which alarm stayed off when they would travel, and they had gone out of the country, and he would want his share if we were going to get some money. We arrived at that place. We had our getaway car, and our driver was parked somewhere. We jumped into the yard following the directions that he had given to us so that we won't trigger the alarm system. We then entered into the house. It was a very big, nice, quiet place in the suburbs. And when we got inside, everything was so beautiful. Everything was going so nice. And we thought that this was going to be an easy job. Everyone started getting busy because the way that we entered, we first jumped into the yard, and then we climbed up onto the roof, and the gardener, he had removed some of the tiles so that we can go through the roof, because he had discovered that when you enter through the roof, then you won't trigger the alarm system. And then we jumped into the toilet in the bedroom, and then we entered the house through the bedroom. So that is what we had done. When we were inside, we started packing laptops. There were laptops everywhere, electronics, jewelry, clothes, putting them into the bags that we had. That was when we went into the kitchen, and then we started eating. There was a lot of wonderful, marvelous food that was there. And we told ourselves to just help ourselves to a little bit of alcohol, because there was some expensive whiskey, because there was a mini bar. So we started drinking. The more that we drank, and we told ourselves that we would leave the next morning before the sun would have gone up. So we just sat on the couches and we started watching some movies. And the sofa that I sat on, I had never seen such a couch in my entire life, because it had a lot of buttons, and each and every button that you would press, the sofa would even transform even to become a bed. It would massage your back. So looking at all of those things, knowing that we had not triggered any alarm system, we just wanted to relax. And we did not know that what was happening at the time, it was something that was really spiritual. We were being kept at that place by a spirit, and we would just feel lazy. We kept on eating and drinking a lot of alcohol. So our getaway driver, when he saw that our phones, they were now going to voicemail, that was when he ran away. He thought that we had been caught. The next day, that was when we woke up and we found out that there was no exit, and we could not even get outside of that house no matter what. We checked our phones had no network. We were so confused, and everything that was happening at that time, it was just pure spiritual. We would sleep, wake up, eat food. There was a lot of food, and we did not even think about a lot of things until the owner of the house returned back home. When the owner of the house returned back home, what surprised us was that he was not even angry at us. All that he did was that he called his sangoma. There was a sangoma that came with a coffin which was white in color. They undressed us and they cut our pubic hair, and they put our pubic hair inside that coffin, which they took upstairs. But before they had done this, they gave us red bond paper, and they told us to write our names and our surnames. And then that was when the owner of the house took a machine to clip our hair, and he cut our pubic hair. So some of the people that I was with, they did not have hair underneath their armpits. It was only I that had hair underneath my armpit as well as pubic hair. So they took it and put it separately. After that, he then chased us out of his house. He was calm. He did not scream. He did not call the police. It was as if they already knew that we were there, and we were kicked out of their house, and we returned back to the location where we were staying. So I then started to hear voices. To this very day, when I start to run mad, I hear the voice of a Xhosa speaking man that will tell me that it is time for me to return back. Then I'll start to run mad. Even if I am in Zim, I really do not know how I do it. But even when I hear a voice that will tell me to return back to South Africa, I'll just pick money, and this will be the money that I will use for transport. I do not have a passport. I no longer have an ID document. But if I am on a bus, on a car, I travel from Berengwa, where I do come from, until I reach Johannesburg without ever being stopped by the police. The moment that I come to Joburg, I will pick money, and this is the money that I will use to rent, to look for accommodation, until when the voice tells me to go back. There are times when I wake up and I will see that I am sleeping with homeless people, or even underneath the bridge, eating food from the dustbin. The first time when it happened, I was surprised because I came back to my senses. I was close to this other McDonald's restaurant, so there was a big bin that was close to it. I was busy picking up food from that dustbin, yet I had came from the location saying that I'm going to do a peace job, but I started to lose my mind along the way. My friend who brought all of these problems into my life is nowhere to be found. When he was still in South Africa, I tried to speak with him to hear if he can assist me. But what he said, he told me that I was just having hallucinations. It is not possible that you can walk on foot from Berengwa to Blawayo, but it happened. I started walking. I just had someone telling me to go to Blawayo on foot, and I found myself walking, and I ended up being in Blawayo. It also happens when I am in South Africa. I can be in Soweto, then I will hear a voice saying, go to Midrand right now, but it speaks to me in Xhosa, and I will start to walk and I will go to Midrand. The other things that I did, maybe this is the reason as to why I am the one who is like losing his mind amongst those people that tried to rob that house. This man and his wife, they went to this other church that is called the ZCC church. So there were some photographs of the leader of their church. So I took a photograph in there after I started to have a running stomach, and I just smashed it onto the ground, and I used that photo to wipe myself. This I did when I was drunk. Even the South African guys that I was with, they said, man, do you know what you are doing? You should not do that. Use some paper. But I was totally drunk, so I just grabbed it from the wall. This photo, it was in the kitchen, and I just smashed the picture frame and I teared off that big picture, and then I went with it to the toilet and I relieved myself and I used it to wipe myself. So I'm thinking that maybe this is the reason as to why I have this curse upon my life and I am struggling like this. So I have been looking for help, and if there are people that can assist me, I'll be grateful. Dear listeners, right there was a message that was sent to me by one of our dear brother who is saying that he used to be a thief in South Africa, and now there are times when he starts to run mad. Let us try to assist him in the comment section. Strange things indeed, they do happen in this world. Let us meet again in the following episode.